Do you know what sleep paralysis is? Basically, it's when you wake up and your mind wakes up, but your body isn't. And so you can't physically move. So you wake up and you're paralyzed in bed. Something like 40 million Americans suffer from it. It's absolutely terrifying. You will see people in the corner of your rooms. You will feel this presence staring at you. You might hear things. I had had that from teenager on. Every 4 to 6 months or so it would kind of happen. Scientifically, there's an explanation for it. However, like, I've talked to people who had it at the same time as somebody else in the house. So, like, weird occurrences around it. I basically just kind of got in the mind of like, well, I can work with this story and turn it into a movie. And so I'd always been terrified of the concept of aliens, of extraterrestrials. And so I kind of use that as my basis for this story.
Has your life, your dreams been interrupted? Good news. It is possible to reinvent our lives. People are doing it every day, and some are brave enough to share the struggles, disappointments, and challenges. If you are looking for a new beginning, a do-over, or to rediscover your passion, maybe even find a new one, then grab a cup of coffee and let's talk. Interrupted, Act 2, Reinventing Your Legacy, with your host, Coach Lori.
Will Hopp is a writer, producer. See if I can get all of this. So he wrote his film, he produced it. Did you act in it?
I did not act in it. I'm not a very good actor.
You funded it?
I funded it, I directed it, and now I'm taking it on an independent theatrical tour.
That is a lot of hats. Tell us the name of your film.
It's called Abductee. It's basically a psychological thriller about a man being abducted by aliens, trying to understand what's happening to him. Throughout the process, he kind of convinces his sister to go help him out. She thinks he's crazy until she realizes he's not. And then her story kind of kicks off, and then she has to decide whether or not she's going to cut ties and run, or if she's going to stick with him as he kind of goes down this like obsessive madness of the whole, the whole event.
Wow. Well, it sounds amazing. And I did see a few clips previous to this. What made you first of all, write a screenplay and then go the whole route with it?
So I've always had a creative mindset. And when I was a real little kid, I wanted to be a writer. And I was reading books that were way above my age range. I was reading Stephen King books and things like that. I got like a junky old laptop at a garage sale a long time ago. I started writing and comparing myself to everybody that I was reading. So obviously I couldn't do it. And then in my mid-20s, I kind of got the writing bug again and started writing. And I was writing novels. I was like, I want to write some novels. And in that process, I saw how the industry was kind of changing and how hard it would be to get published. And so I kind of decided, well, if I make a movie based on one of my novels, that will give more value to the novels. And through a series of events, a couple projects kind of got sidelined. Abductee kind of came to the forefront. I had always suffered from sleep paralysis growing up. Do you know what sleep paralysis is?
Yes, I've heard of it, but tell us, please.
So basically, it's when you wake up and your mind wakes up, but your body isn't. And so you can't physically move. So you wake up and you're paralyzed in bed. Something like 40 million Americans suffer from it. It's absolutely terrifying. You will see people in the corner of your rooms. You will feel this presence staring at you. You might hear things. And I had had that from, a teenager on. Every 4 to 6 months or so it would kind of happen. And scientifically, there's an explanation for it. However, like, I've talked to people who had it at the same time as somebody else in the house. So, like, weird occurrences around it. I basically just kind of got in the mind of like, well, I can work with this story and turn it into a movie. And so I'd always been terrified of the concept of aliens, of extraterrestrials. And so I kind of use that as my basis for this story. And I had originally gone down the rabbit hole of a found footage film because Paranormal Activity had recently come out and made a lot of money. And I thought that would be cheap and easy to do. And it kind of shifted to be also narrative driven. But oddly enough, after I wrote the screenplay for the movie, the sleep paralysis stopped completely. It didn't happen. And then about 2 years after that, it happened again. And I saw a figure sitting on the pillow next to me. And I took that as like, maybe I should make the movie. And so scrounged up some money, and we basically got some actors. We had a 15-day shoot in the Lake Arrowhead area, also a little bit in Victorville, California, and Anaheim. And we had a movie. It was weird because I came into the process being the person with the least amount of experience. I didn't have directing experience. I didn't have any experience on set. But here I was, the guy in charge of the production. I did have people that were kind of guiding me a little bit, but for the most part, like, our days began and ended on what I wanted to see done. I had actually had a professional writer, screenwriter, who had worked on Roseanne and Quantum Leap, and he actually had been one of the ones to submit a draft of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, although I didn't know that at the time, to Spielberg after Spielberg was unhappy with one of the people that he was working with on the project. And he went in and he completely redlined the script and said, "You're not going to film all this. You need to cut a lot of this. You need to switch a lot of this." And it didn't take the movie in the vision I wanted it to. So I stuck to my guns, and we actually managed to come in under budget and ahead of schedule. We finished in 15 days. We filmed the entirety of the script. It was a little minor miracle that got done too, and for the most part without a hitch.
Wow. Did you bring in film cameras or did you do it via phones? I know they're doing that now.
No, this was back in 2014. There were not phones that could handle that. We worked with Blackmagic cameras, 4K, 2.5K. We had a Sony Handycam for the sequences that were found footage, were it meant to feel like something that was more of documentary style. We had cinematographers, we had, proper lighting gaffer, we had the professional people, we had makeup, we had all of that. We basically, though, had as trimmed down of a crew as we possibly could. A lot of us were wearing a few hats. Some of us were producers as well. Our person who handled wardrobe was also a producer on the film, and a lot of that crossing over to make sure things were done right.
So you got the film done, then what?
We were working with some people to look about possibly getting financing for future projects. My editor at the time was kind of torn between working on the film, but also taking jobs that could, bring him income. And I kind of told him, hey, look, if you got to take jobs, take jobs. We all kind of came in and moonlighted on Abductee a little bit. So it took a while to get it finished. It took about 2 years to get everything edited and finished, which is a while for a movie. But we were done. We had a finished film, very, very happy with the final cut. I got the hard drives back and I plugged them in of all the raw footage that I needed, and all the hard drives were empty. Basically, it was like start a new partition, kind of empty. And I panicked. I didn't do anything to the drives. I unplugged them. I took them back over to his house. We took a look at them. We had no idea what happened. Nobody to this day knows what happened. But we ended up getting them to a computer repair place locally here in Vegas. It's no longer in business. And they spent about 4 years recovering pretty much the entire movie off that. We lost a lot of the raw data. So when you film in 4K, you film in the highest resolution possible, and it pulls in all the information. We lost a lot of that data. We had up-resed data. We had footage that was good enough to be on a movie screen, but it meant that color correction was no longer just arrange the movie and click a button and color correct to one color scheme. It now became more of a visual effect. What could have been like a 1-week process took, I don't even know how long. We had to get all the data back. We had to reorganize all the files. We had to color correct every single scene, kind of as a visual effect. It was a process. We finished the film in October of 2014. And in 2024, we had the finalized movie that we were able to show family and friends. And we did a red carpet here in Las Vegas. And weird stuff didn't stop happening. We ended up, we got a distributor, Gravitas Ventures, and we were happy. We were like, great, we're going to go with them. They're a bulk distributor, but they'll start selling the movie as part of the catalog. And then right before we were able to sign a contract with them, they got bought out by Shot Studios, and they were no longer accepting new projects. So they could not accept Abductee. So we had to go back to the drawing board and find another distributor. And Gravitas had been its own company for decades, I believe. So it's weird how things kind of happened.
How old are you?
I'm 42.
Oh,
when I
okay.
started this movie, I was 31.
Wow. That's a lot of disappointment for a first project.
I jokingly say that every project I work on is my favorite. I mean, I've written about 25 screenplays at this point, 25 screenplays, teleplays, script formatted stuff. And every time I work on one, it's my favorite project. there was a moment in time where I just had to accept that this movie was never going to get finished. And I had to kind of say, well, if it gets done, now it's a bonus. I started to detach myself from it emotionally a long time ago. I didn't have investors to answer to, so that took some of the pressure off. Maybe that slowed the process down a little bit. I'm not sure. Even if the movie didn't get distributed, we still got to make a movie. We still got to go film a movie, and it would have been a huge disappointment because it's wonderfully made. The not necessarily by me. I'm an okay director, but the lead actors are astounding. We have a great supporting cast. Everybody really pulled it together for the movie. If it didn't get shown, then I would have been disappointed because I think that their story needs to be told. Some point in time, you just have to kind of like, well, this isn't going to get made. So now if it does, it's just kind of like a bonus.
And then it got made, and now you're taking it on the road.
Yeah, so we do have a distributor, and we were going to go the streaming route. Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day is coming out this summer, June 12th, but there's a lot of other stuff that's coming out from the government, just stuff about UFOs and UAPs that really kind of picking up steam right now. Originally, we were going to go to streaming, and then I thought, well, why can't I take my movie to theaters? And I got the approval from my distributor. They're actually pretty good about, like, we had talked about it in the very beginning that I wanted some creative freedom in how to market and distribute my film because I wanted to make sure that the subject matter was respected. I didn't want to portray it as something that it wasn't. I wanted to respect the UFO abductee community. And so I was pretty firm on that. But we got to a point where, what if I took the movie to independent theaters? What if I took them to boutique movie theaters around the country? We have some in the Pacific Northwest coming up in May 11th, 12th, and 13th at the Kennedy School Theater, the Neptune Movie House, and the Columbian. So we have those. And then on June 12th, we do have one little studio here in Vegas we're going to be showing it at. We're in talks with 2K Games to show it to a lot of their employees because the guy who scored the film works for 2K Games. We have the oldest theater in Austin, Texas, who is letting us show it there. Oklahoma City we're at. I'm in talks with about 10 more locations. And the hope is that we can gain enough interest, get enough butts and seats that this movie starts to get picked up by some more theaters and potentially get more of a limited or wider theatrical release. Because it's not unheard of for a movie to get some steam and then all of a sudden a major theater organization says, we'll pick it up.
You do not need to be famous to start a podcast. You just need a story, a message, or a business that deserves to be heard. Inside Podcrafter, I help women turn their experience into influence with simple podcast tools, real support, and live office hours twice a month. Because podcasting isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about creating connection, building authority, and making an impact. I'm Lori Hardy, and I'd love to help you finally launch the podcast that's been sitting in your heart.
And the hope is that we can gain enough interest, get enough butts and seats that this movie starts to get picked up by some more theaters and potentially get more of a limited or wider theatrical release. Because it's not unheard of for a movie to get some steam and then all of a sudden a major theater organization says, we'll pick it up. And now you're in 500, 1,000 theaters. You're an AMC or Regal. But independent theaters were important to me this first go because they're the place where a lot of like smaller indie films kind of get seen. Indie theaters, they're really important. Culturally, they're really important for every city to have that theater that everyone's like, oh, you got to go to that theater. It's a great experience. Yeah. I saw this movie there and no one else was showing that movie.
Now, when you say I'm going to take the film, do you physically go and sit through the screening with it?
Yeah. Yeah, so with the exception of one screening right now, that conflicting, I can't be there for that one. But right now, I'm going to go to each location. I'm going to be there at the screening. I'm going to do a Q&A afterwards. I'm going to meet people. I want to talk about the film. The subject matter is such that people actually got really excited to talk about their experiences after watching the film. If for some people, just hearing about the concept, sleep paralysis, or an experience they had with the UFO, or even an abduction when they were younger, I found that a lot of people started talking about stories that I'd never heard of, friends of mine that I'd never heard of. To me, this is just an opportunity for a great discussion. I want to be there for these showings. I want to be there to talk about that. But also, there's a lot of young filmmakers, and not so young filmmakers who are trying to get their projects off the ground who this seems like a mountain they can't climb. And, I want them to know that that's not the case, that you can make a movie. You can like, you don't just have to make a $3,000 movie. There are routes that you can take to make a film that can be seen by a lot of people and actually be a good movie.
I love that you're kind of pioneering, not that this is brand new, but you're saying, okay, I'm going to do it this way because I want to, I love it because it's about relationship. You're like, I'm
Yeah.
going to go, I'm going to meet the people. And there's just something to that. I think now more than ever, I think we got so far away from being able to access people who did things like this. And for you to
Yeah.
go and say, hey, ask me any questions, that's powerful, but also it's so relatable.
Yeah, it really, I'm not the first person to do this, but it is very uncommon. It's very uncommon to be the writer, director, producer, to fund the movie, and to go and take the movie around. And it's even more uncommon for the movie to be something other than something that cost $5,000. We had a budget of over 100,000. We were in the ultra low budget category, but we had a substantial budget. We had a budget that could buy you in some parts of the country a house in order to get to that phase. I mean, I leveraged some personal finances to make that happen, some assets, and to get to that phase, that was able to afford real cameras, that was able to afford real locations. People just they want to connect over things like this. And you see a movie and you're like, man, I'm never going to know these people. I'm never going to know these people who worked on it, who made it. And, and if I can get some of the cast or crew along for some of the showings, if they're local to that area, I would love to have them. But for right now, it's going to be me. I'm going to be at least every single movie theater that I show it at. The one that I can't make it to is a third showing in Oklahoma City at Rodeo Cinema. They're going to be showing it on Thursday and twice on Saturday for those showings. And I can make it to the Saturday showings and doing Q&A both times. The Thursday, I probably cannot, unfortunately.
So your interruptions were pretty big, but did you see them as paranormal? I mean, that seems kind of weird to lose all the raw footage.
We had a lot of weird experiences happen in the process of making this movie. We had people that had sleep paralysis for the first time after being brought in, after being cast, after being brought in for the crew. We had one of the people on our crew woke up to weird marks on his back, actually in line, circular small round red welts that were not bugs. They were in an actual pattern. And he had no idea what happened. And they happened a month later. And he had somebody spiritually tell him that he had opened a doorway in a past life. He needed to close it. And after that, nothing else happened. But this, being brought into the movie kind of opened that. We just had interesting things happen on set. I read tarot, and I have a friend of mine who reads my tarot, and I asked her without telling her anything about what was going on. I said, "Hey, can you read some cards and tell me what these cards say?" And she goes, "Any context?" I was like, "No." And she read, and she said, "Well, it's benevolent. It's not going to stop, and quit asking questions." And weird things happen all along this process, especially from the fact that we lost the footage, but we had no idea what happened. Even the computer people were like, "We don't know what happened to your drives. We can't figure it out. The content's there. We know it's there. We just can't get to it yet." But if I wanted to attach something more to this, it's that right now, UFOs and talk about extraterrestrials, that's in the zeitgeist. That is really big right now. That has become more popular and socially acceptable to talk about. And it wasn't 10 years ago. So my only suggestion is, to myself on this is that the movie's coming out when it needs to come out. If it had come out a decade ago, maybe it would have come out to no fanfare and just sat there on streaming, and maybe it would have been considered a good UFO film by some people. But I want it to be more than just a UFO movie. I want it to be a movie that actually can affect people. And especially fictional films can have a strong, profound impact on people's mental and psyche for things. Paranormal Activity, when that movie came out, suddenly everyone had a ghost story. that they had experienced. Before that, that was not the case. Before that, if you had a ghost story, you didn't talk about it. But after that movie, it's like, oh yeah, my grandmother's house was haunted. And, even if you go back and look at like The Exorcist, before that, nobody cared about Ouija boards. They weren't scary. And then The Exorcist came out, and then suddenly, don't touch a Ouija board. Like even I don't touch Ouija boards, and I kind of a scientific mindset, and I won't touch them because movies, especially fictional films, can have a profound impact. And my hope is that there is a community of people who have experiences that have had to them, whether or not those experiences are extraterrestrial related or sleep related or whatever. It's very real to them, and they feel like they can't talk about them. And my hope is that by this movie getting out there, by people watching this film, that they will share their own experiences with sleep paralysis, that they will find common ground. And now suddenly everybody who's experiencing weird occurrences, they don't seem so crazy. They seem like, just let's talk about our stories. And I think that's kind of important to do, especially right now where everything that's happening right now in the world can feel so divisive. We need more things to be inclusive, to bring people in. And I think that this film can do that.
I love that. And as a podcaster, I'm all about the story. And what we find is when somebody shares their story of, maybe they're going through grief, or maybe they lost a child, but whenever they speak that story, finally, people come out of the woodworks and like, me too, me too. And that's the power of story. And I love it that you were so committed to it, but also you were willing to let it go if it didn't happen. I mean, that sounds pretty mature.
There's sometimes you can't do anything about it, especially when you've written the number of screenplays that I've written. There's a lot that will never be realized. And I know that. Like, I can't meet. A weird thing happens when you're an artist. You keep making more art, and you realize that a higher percentage of your projects will go unrealized. And so you will die someday, even at an old age, with 90% of your works completely unrealized. And you have to accept that fact. And sometimes you can stick with them, but sometimes you're like, well, I wrote this one. This gets to live forever in my mind. It was different because we actually made this movie, and I do have a sequel plan for it. I do. One of the leads, we actually have they're already interested in coming back for the movie. I'm writing the sequel this summer. I've got a pretty streamlined process for writing a screenplay, so I can probably bang it out pretty quickly. I wrote this first one in about 5 days. I plot everything out to get rid of the plot holes first, with each scene is one paragraph, and then I just transcribe that pretty much to the screenplay. That's how I do it. I'm looking forward to writing this second movie while I'm on my tour, meeting people and throwing experiences in there. But I take the concept of what happens in this first film and I just raise up the dial a little bit. This will require a bit more money for funding, not significantly more, but enough that I can't leverage personal assets, a house, to make the second movie happen. So I will be looking for actual investors for the second movie, but I do think that there is a good story to be told in this one too.
Really, I'm so excited for you, and I'm happy for your film, and I can't wait for it to get out there. But something you said really resonated with me as far as legacy is maybe a lot of these will not be turned into films, but you still write them. So they're still your legacy, and when you're gone, they're still written somewhere.
Yeah.
They're still there. And I just think that's really profound, because when we leave here, we can leave a mark, but not if it's left in our head.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because we only have so many hours in a day. And I think that's where a lot of like the mental, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of stigma with AI right now. And there's a lot of people out there who are, especially artists, who are like, well, what could I do with it? What could I do with this? When you look at films that cost tens and hundreds of millions of dollars that AI is starting to be able to do, the question is asked at this point is, do we use AI to go down this rabbit hole and make our projects? And that's a slippery slope, because, you're cutting actors, you're cutting a lot of artists in a lot of ways out of the picture. I believe that AI can be useful for some things. I think it can be useful for realizing an idea on page before it goes to full fruition, to say, this is conceptually what I want it to look like. Now we can take this and make the movie out of this. I don't know how to, I'm really not a good artist, so storyboards are not something I can do. So for me to say, I want it to look this this way. I need someone who can translate that. It's like a tattoo artist. You have to have a tattoo artist who knows how to translate your vision into what you want it to be. We're at a point now where we're touching upon the idea of, well, can I make all of my dreams that live in my head possible through this one technology? I think we're going to be missing the human element there. I think no matter how long it takes, we have CGI that no matter what, like, does not feel real. Like, sure, you can watch a Toy Story movie, and because the entire world is CGI, it feels immersive. But the second you bring a person into it, you now see that disconnect. It's why Jurassic Park worked so well even 20, 30 years ago now, 30 years ago, is because the T-Rex was there and they used CGI to smooth around the edges. The raptors were people in costumes and they used CGI to clean things and angles to make things real. So practical effect. Yeah, sure, there was CGI in the background, but for the most part, people were there on set. And I think everything is going down that route. And so for me, just telling the story on page, like, I have a pretty vivid imagination. So I see the stories that I've written in my head and I'm like, hey, I wrote it. It's done. I'm happy with that. Do I want to make them all? Yeah. There's going to be some that don't get made, and that's okay. And you got to learn to let those go.
When you mentioned AI, again, it is really an interesting topic. But one thing I heard some people, I was on a webinar and they said AI plus humanity. As long as we keep putting humanity, working together versus all AI, that was kind of their solution, that we always have that human touch. I don't know if that's possible, but
well, I mean, every technology has displaced people. When you tied a rock to a stick and made a shovel 1 million years ago, you were displacing somebody's purpose or whatever for digging with their hands. Every technology is going to do that. And I think we're at a point now where we're not finding a way to bring everybody into this process. We're just doing them. So we have these data centers that are just sucking up energy. We have all this content that's getting out there. And honestly, like, we've already got a content surplus. I mean, there are so many shows out there that we can't watch, so much on streaming that's just not possible. And part of the problem too is we have studios that don't want to pay people. So actors have to take on so many jobs to just make money. So now you have this surplus of projects coming out, movies and TV shows, that there's no way to watch everything. I think we're at a point now, especially with AI, where there's going to be so much content that at a certain point in time, we're going to have to say, whoa, slow down. Let's focus more on quality over the quantity of the stuff. And, luckily, Abductee was done at a time where people have been working on AI since the 80s. This is not a new thing. And AI is just a catchy buzzword for it, a calculator. This word plus this word probably equals this word when you put them all together. And we spent 40 years working on this algorithm. But the question now comes down to is, what is it good for? And should it be an art? And should it be used for that? And artists are already doing really cool things in blocking it. There's already programs you can get for your art that's online that AI can't read. And I'm actually waiting for the day that school systems start basically providing their own word processor, where kids have to write their reports on those word processors that don't copy their keystrokes, but give a report to the teacher of, like, they typed this up themselves. I'm waiting for that. It's going to happen. The pendulum will swing backwards, and we'll see what that means for art too. Are you going to have a lot of people who are now in a lot of demand because others were using AI to write screenplays, and now, like, the word of the screenwriter will be so much more valuable.
Well, you have a little one, so you're going to see a lot of changes. I remember in my kids' life, as they were growing up, suddenly they weren't teaching cursive anymore. And it was like, so weird. But again, it's how we adapt. Well, we're about out of time, Will. This has been so great. Two things. One is, how can we find you and support you? Like, do you have a list of your tours of where you're going?
Easiest way to find me is abducteemovie.com. Just how it sounds, abducteemovie.com. I've got the social handles on there. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Facebook at Abductee, Instagram at Abductee Movie, YouTube. I've got a few videos on there. So, and then the list of locations that I'll be at is on the website. I try to keep things pretty organized. But also, if you reach out to me, if you send me an email, I will get back to you. If you want me to go to your city, if you're interested in the movie, reach out to me and I'll see what I can set up. I'm still booking everything right now. So I do have some flexibility to get out to Cleveland or get out to Detroit or New York or LA or, maybe even a small town that I can fly into a major hub and then spend a couple hours driving there. I want to do this. I want to be here for people, and I'm willing to put in the work.
Awesome. Okay, two more. One more is a shout out to our friend Scott Burns. Who,
Yes.
I don't know if you know this, but he was my original broadcast teacher.
Really?
Way back in the
Scott's
day.
amazing. We
Yeah.
like to do lunch with him every quarter if we can, at least every year. He's great.
Yeah, he's such a talent, and it's so funny. He's not in Seattle anymore, but one day I was walking through a store and I heard, I think it was two words, "Do it now" or something. It was just such a brief thing, and I went, "That's Scott," and I texted him because
Yeah.
I heard it on the radio in a store, and I did the two words, and he goes, "You knew that was me," but it's just he has that.
He's got a
kind of
distinct
voice.
voice. He was the
Yeah,
voice of Bowser in a bunch of Mario games. That's
I know,
huge.
I
Right
know.
away, I was like, "Oh, you're my best friend now."
I told my grandson, he's only 3, but I'm like, I know Bowser.
Yeah.
So, okay, the last thing is, what is it you want us to know?
I want people to be a little more open to stories. I want them to be more open to experiences, and I want them to be open to dreams. I want people to go, maybe I can do this, or maybe I can find people who can do it or who can help me with it. I think everybody is so. I think most people are so like not scared of, but like they're like, how is someone going to take advantage of me? As opposed to just being like, well, why can't we all just give everyone else the benefit of the doubt? And I think that that's something that we need a little more of this world. And I think that if you started doing that with everyone else, more projects would get realized, more stories could be shared, there'd be more acceptance of a lot of things, especially now with the divisiveness, that's going on in the world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Will.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Next time, Uninterrupted.
My dad with cancer, my brother-in-law with cancer, my mom with dementia. And I did not have time to grieve in between each one. As soon as one got better, my mom moved in with the dementia. And actually, simultaneously, my sister's husband got sick, and I was taking care of her and him and my mom. I used to joke, the only reason I didn't have a nervous breakdown, there was no time.
If you love this podcast, here's a big ask. Will you share with your friends and family, subscribe, give us a review, and a 5-star rating so that others looking to reinvent their lives will be able to get the help they're looking for? Thank you in advance.